pattern you'll have a lot of papers. One of the papers is the main drawing, and it's also the tracing lines or the tracing drawing for the small size version. And if you look at the paper, you'll see it has, each section is numbered with a letter and a number. And we're going to do this when we start the applique process and when we start the tracing process. It's like paint by number. We're going to start with 1 and go 2, 3, 4 all the way to the end. And I believe this one has 62 pieces. Now, if you're doing the small one, this is all the paper you need to start your tracing and to do your applique work on it. But if you're doing the large one, it's quite a bit larger, doesn't even fit on here. It's about 4 different pages, and it will tell you where to cut on the pages and where to tape. So I've cut mine and I've got the tape on here. And you'll see this part is not numbered on this big one. On both of these, we're going to have to use the light box, and we're going to turn the design over, and I marked on here for some reason. And when you put it on the light box, then you'll get to see it. So you're tracing in the reverse. So you'll be tracing in the reverse on this one and the large one as well. So this one, I've put some numbers on, and I number my sections as I go, so I'll know what I've done and what I'm doing next, and I'll show you that in just a little bit. So go ahead and get your tape. Tape your large one if you're doing the large one. If you're not, just take this out and your Steam-A-Seam too. And Tana says to use a pencil when she traces, but I found it's easier. I can get a smoother line if I use a marker, like a fine tip marker, a fine tip Sharpie, or even the micron pen. The micron pens are more expensive, so if you want to get the ultra fine Sharpie marker, then I find it's smoother when you're tracing the lines than it is with pencil. The only drawback with using the marker is if you make a mistake, you can't erase it. So you can decide what's best for you. When you get ready to trace, you'll need your numbered drawing, the small drawing, and I'm going to be showing you a demo of tracing the large size. If you're doing the small size, you just need the small drawing. But we'll need the small drawing to refer to the numbers and the letters. You'll also need a piece of Steam-A-Seam too, and if you look closely, you can see that there's a grid line, and then sometimes there's a little iron on it, and these are all in yellow. You're going to trace with this side up, so the yellow side is going to be up. To make it easier for me, I cut off, I have 18-inch Steam-A-Seam. I think they also make 12-inch wide. So I cut off a piece about 8-10 inches, whatever, just so it's easier to work with. And you can see this one has already been traced. I've zoomed in on one of the pieces I've traced. And what we're going to do when we trace is, we're first going to look at the section or the piece, and this happens to be S22, S like Sam, 22. And the first thing we're going to do is trace the outside line of this patch. So we'll trace all of this with a solid line. Then we're going to look at the paper and see what overlaps it, and anything that's going to overlap, go on top of this piece, we'll need to mark the areas here with a dashed line coming on the outside. So we're going to, when we cut it, we're going to cut on the dashed line, and it's going to be slightly larger than we need. So the piece that we put on top of it will have something to go on top of at the end. So we can see from here that something's going to overlap on this side, or this curve here, and something's going to overlap over here. We don't know what that is yet. But when we get finished tracing, we'll have pieces like this. So here's another piece with the big oval. I believe this is a headlight here, and this is the rim around the headlight. And then so other odd-shaped pieces, and you can see where the overlapping occurs is where the dashed lines are. Okay, so we'll do that. We're going to take our large drawing, and I have my light box under here. So I'm going to turn it on. Let me see how this works. And we turn it over, turn the drawing over, and we'll be able to see with the light box, we'll be able to see the lines here. And if you have anything that overlapped with your paper because you taped it, like right here, just mark over it so you can see it better, because in this place right here the paper is doubled and you might not be able to see it. You see where the paper is doubled here? So you just trace those lines to make sure you can see everything. Now the first thing, we're going to look at this drawing, the small drawing, and find number 1. And we see that it's number 1 is R, and R is the fabric number. So whatever R is, that's the fabric we're going to use, and we're going to use number 1. So I've zoomed in on R1. And we can see that R1 is going to be this windshield area. And this large area here is where we're going to draw our solid line all around this big area, whatever covers that up. And then we're going to go through, because we can see that this edge is covered with another piece, and this edge, and all of this, and this is all covered. So we'll have to put dashed lines around this entire section here. And then we look over here. I always like looking toward the next one. So the next one is R2, and so it will be the same fabric, and it's the second one. And we can see here that this is the large area here that we will trace, this area here. And then we'll see that these are the overlaps, so we'll have to put dashed lines here, all the way around to there. And another thing we want to pay attention to is, we know that since this is an R and this is an R, we'll want to try to put these pieces, when we trace them, close together on our steam-a-seam, like we have these pieces here close together. That way we can just cut out the area that contains all the pieces for that one fabric, and you can save some of your steam-a-seam too. Now I'm going to show you how I'm going to trace out this R2. And so here is the large area here that we'll first trace out the solid line, and then we'll go around it and trace the dashed line. So I'm going to put the yellow side is up from the steam-a-seam, and we're just going to trace the line. Now we've traced the large outside line, and we're going to come out and trace about 1/8 of an inch away. We're going to trace dashed lines, because everything is going to cover these edges, or all of these edges will be covered with another patch later. And then I mark it, this is R2, and then the asterisk means so now here's your R2, and we've traced it out. When we cut it later, we'll be cutting on the dashed line. So after we do R2, we're going to look for 3. And so we look on our page again, the master page, and we see that number 3 is B. So that's fabric B, and it's number 3. Zoomed in, so here is B3. It's the back, it's actually the seat showing through the windshield of the car. So it goes over here. So you see this is fabric B, and here number 4 is fabric B as well. So we're going to trace B3 and B4 next. Let's find it here. Here's B3. Here's B3, and next door is B4, and I'll show you how we trace those. So let's do the solid lines first. So everything that makes up the shape of B3. We're going to trace with the solid line. And then we're going to look here and see this line will go on top of the background, which the background here is R1. It's the windshield. So that is going to stay a straight line. But then we see that we have all of these other pieces, the steering wheel and then the edge around the windshield is all going to go on top of this B3. So all these other areas, we're going to add in some dashed lines. So we just extend the line here, add the dashed lines to the other sides, and now we know that all of these will overlap. And then mark this B3.